Amen. Last week, we left off with Abraham's dad, Terah, leaving Ur and taking his family to Haran. In verse 31 of chapter 11, and Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran. It's interesting, his name is the same as the town they're going to, but that's just coincidence. And his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abram's wife, and they went out with them from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan. And they came to Haran and dwelt there. So the days of Terah were 205 years. And Terah died in Haran. So now we have Abram, Sarah, and Lot living in Haran. Abram's probably the oldest. He's in charge of the family. Interesting picture. And so, of course, Haran is kind of in northern Iraq as we'd look at it on the map today. For chapter 12, verse 1. Now the Lord had said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. Notice the repeat there. We've got the country, he says it once, but and away from your family and away from your father's house. Go to a land I'm going to show you. We know from Acts chapter 7 that God had spoken to Abram while he was still in Ur, and before Terah took the family to Haman. So Abram's not really being completely obedient to God. Leave your family, get out of this country, and go. I'm going to show you somewhere to go. And the whole family gets in the motorhome and moves up to Haran. Now we know the land that he's going to show him is the land of Israel, the promised land, as we call it. Now for the promise that God made to Abram. Verse 2, I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth, even in dregs, shall be blessed. You think these verses are key to us understanding the Bible? Absolutely. This is a key section. We already have the background knowledge from chapter 3 that God is going to send a Savior. Man ate of the fruit and fell, and right away God introduces the Savior that's going to come and restore man. It's in Genesis 3:15. He's speaking to the serpent, which is Satan. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, meaning her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. So that's, of course, absolutely what happened when Jesus came. Satan, he was crucified. Ouch, ouch, just like getting nipped on the heel. But Jesus crushed his head, stepped on Satan's head, and defeated him completely. So here in chapter 12, verses 2 and 3, we're seeing God revealing more information of how he's going to bring about this Savior that's coming to the world. It's going to come through Abram's offspring. Verse 2, I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great. So from Abram's children, he's going to create a great nation. Remember, he doesn't have any kids yet. And did God do it? Yeah, Israel, of course. Now, it wasn't really communicated here as part of his plan, but he also created great nations through Ishmael, which was the Arab nations. So Abram's name did become great. Boy, if you're talking to the Jews at Jesus' time, how important was Abraham? Abraham and Moses, key people. And God did bless Abram. First thing he blessed him by was having a relationship with him. Imagine, a close relationship. How many people would love to just hear from God today? Or have God appear to you today? He defended him against his adversaries. He blessed him with wealth. And he also blessed his kids by making them a nation. Now in verse 2 and 3, combining kind of the parts of those, and you shall be a blessing, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. How are we all blessed by Abram's kids? That's where the Messiah came from, of course. We all get reconciled to God through that Messiah. So Abram's a blessing to each and every one of us. And this little short section is key to understanding God's plan for mankind. Now, looking at this, as is typical, Look at this promise or this contract. When you have a contract, you have both sides giving something, right? What did Abram give on this promise or contract? Okay, God, I guess so, if you say so. God did it all. I will bless you. I will make you great. I will bless others through you. There's no performance clause for Abram. It wasn't, I will bless you if you obey me. I will bless you if you go to Calvary Chapel every Sunday. He didn't say that. I'm going to do it. I'm going to bless you. Even when you're stupid, I'm going to still bless you. Has anybody experienced that in your walk with God? Even when you're stupid, he still blesses you? In fact, that's usually when I get blessed because I'm stupid all the time. But just like us, there's no performance clause. It's simply receiving God's promises, simply believing God. Verse 3, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. Cool promise. This promise of blessing for the friends of God's people and cursing of those that persecute God's people is also key. If you look back historically, every nation that attacks Israel was eventually dealt with by God. Have you met any Edomites lately? Any Moabites? Ammon, Edom, Moab, Assyria, they all became adversaries to Israel, and they don't exist today anymore. They're gone. We had Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar conquered Israel, but later the Medo-Persian Empire conquers them. We had Greece overran Israel, and they desecrated the temple. And then the Romans conquered the Greeks. And the nations that have befriended Israel have certainly been blessed themselves. Can you think of a nation that's befriended Israel that maybe was blessed by God? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's important that America continues to befriend Israel. So we have this promise. Next chapter. So Abraham departed, verse 4, as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. What's wrong with that sentence? Leave your family. Get out of there. Abraham departs. Come on, Lot. Let's go. Shows again partial obedience on the part of Abraham. And Lot turns out to not be a blessing to Abraham. He's kind of a pain. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Now, interestingly, and my daughter brought this up to me, how old was Noah? How old was Abraham when Noah died? We know they lived at the same time. What was it, Beth? 60. Abram was 60 years old when Noah died. They could have gone to Pindles and talked about the flood. Abram knew about the flood. It's top of mind for him. The whole relationship with God thing is, of course you have a relationship with God. We know he's present. Look what he did, this flood, and he preserved great-great-great-great-great-granddad Noah. And we're here today, and he's been talking to me. It's just, it's amazing, the different perspective that he must have had in his relationship with God. You wouldn't question God's existence at all, I would think. Verse 5, Then Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people whom they had acquired in Haran. And they departed to go to the land of Canaan. So they came to the land of Canaan. Abraham passed through the land to the place of Shechem, as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh. And Canaanites were then in the land. If you put up slide number 1. So here we have and they went up to Haran, and then Dad died, and they all headed down, and they came down kind of this direction to Shechem. And I think I have another slide. Here's more of a close-up. So here's the Euphrates River today. This is Iraq. This is actually up in Turkey. Here's Syria, Lebanon. So he would have come down kind of like that to Shechem. We have quite a bit of information. Leave that up if you would. Quite a bit of information in this paragraph. It was a group that traveled with Abram. Look at what it says in verse 5. Then Abraham took Sarai, his wife, of course, Lot, and the people whom they had acquired. Interesting. These would be servants or employees. And Abraham had possessions. He took all their possessions that they had gathered: livestock, tents, camels, tools, trade goods. Went as far as Shechem. If you put up slide 3, this is a significant location. It's in the center of the promised land. It was a crossroads. So here's Shechem. Abraham would have kind of come down this way, around the Sea of Galilee. Here's the Jordan River Valley. There's a valley that he walks up there. But once you get to Shechem, look at all the travels. This is down to Jericho. They called this the ridge route, where you're walking down the ridge of the mountains. Or you could go down to the plain of Sharon, and then down this way to Egypt. Here's the King's Highway. Central spot. He walks there and he decides to hang out for a while. So Shechem was a crossroads. It's where God, as you'll see in a second, he confirms the promise to Abram. Jacob camped here, and he dug a well. It's where Jacob sent his son, Joseph, go check on your brothers, see how they're doing. And what did they do? Threw him into a pit, sold him off into slavery. He was taken down to Egypt. This is where it happened, was in Shechem. Moses commanded Israel to go to Shechem the first thing after entering the promised land. And they were to go there and send the priests up on these 2 mountains, and they would yell, if they read the law, and then if you obeyed it, there were blessings, and those priests would yell the blessings, and then the other priests would yell the cursing. And the people are down in the bottom of the valley hearing all of this. Those 2 mountains are still there. Mount Gerizim, which is one of them, became the site where the Samaritans worshipped. They didn't want to go to Jerusalem because the Jews wouldn't have them. We have to go worship somewhere, so they went up on Mount Gerizim, which was the one where the blessings were yelled. It also became a city of refuge. The Samaritan woman at the well mentioned, where are you going to get this living water? Jacob built this well. Where are you going to go get this water that I'll never thirst again? She was right there at Shechem. So it's an important city. And it says the Canaanites were in the land. Do I have another slide on that? What's the next one? There it is. There's Shechem. This is Google Earth, so I don't think they had quite all of the condominiums there yet. But there's Shechem, and you can see there's a mountain here, and there's a mountain here. This is Gerizim, where the blessings were, and this is, what is it, Ebal? I can't read it. I think that's what it is. And you can see, you got the valley that goes down, there's the ocean down there. So this is a real trade route. Now, where'd the Canaanites come from? Do you guys remember? Who was Canaan's dad? Ham. Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Remember, there was a curse on him because Ham saw Noah's nakedness and didn't act appropriately. And so it was communicated that the Canaanites are going to be servants. They're going to be servants of the other brother's kids. And we're reading here that, they're settling in this area. Verse 7, then God appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants I will give this land. And there, while he's in Shechem, and there he built an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. So we have more information. I'm going to give this land to your kids. First, go to a land I'm going to show you. Now, in verse 7a, the Lord appeared to Abraham, or to Abram. Well, how do you think he did that? Was it a big light? Was it a fax? How did he do it? How does God appear to man when he wants to appear where we can see, feel, touch, communicate? Does it in Jesus. That's the Trinity. Jesus is God in a way that we can relate to him. I think Jesus probably showed up and talked to him. What did God say? This land, it's significant. This is the first of several assurances to Abraham. I keep saying Abraham, I'm sorry. He's still Abram. His name hasn't been changed yet. First of several assurances to Abram that this is going to be your land. This is the promised land that I'm going to give you. Interestingly, he never owned any land. When Sarah died, he bought a cave, a little parcel of land. That's all the land that Abram ever owned in that whole region. But God said, I'm going to give it all to you. So what he's talking about is his descendants. And they did end up owning the land. Verse 8. And he moved from there to the mountain east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west, and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. So Abram journeyed going on still toward the south. So if we're looking at this map, thank you. Wow, that was good. Okay, so he's here in Shechem, and he goes down the ridge route. We've got Ai and Bethel close together. Important towns. We read about them a lot in the Bible. Do I have another shot of that? Here we go. Here's where Bethel is. It's hard to see, but this is a mountaintop. He built his camp here. This looks far away. It's not quite as far as Google Earth pictures it, but there's the city of Ai. Down here is Jericho. Now later, when we have the Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham looks down and he can see Sodom being destroyed, he's up here on this mountaintop. Now our friends that are going to Israel with us, Pastor Mike at Calvary Chapel Blackfoot, he studied archaeology. He knows how to do a square, and he supervises the whole square, and they do archaeology. And his professor was over here at this location. He had done a tour, and he's standing there, and they believe they found the old Sodom down here on the shores of the Dead Sea. But when you're standing here where Abram's camp was, you can't see the shores of the Dead Sea. And he's reading the Bible. Abraham saw Sodom and God raining fire and brimstone down on him. And as he's looking down at the valley, he could see a hump here that looked like a tell on the other side of the Jordan. He had a few days off. He went down there, walked around on the tell, kicked around. He discovered what they think is the real Sodom. He's excavating it now. It's an approved excavation. And there's layers where it's burned. He got a rock. He brought it home. It's all burned. He took it home, took it to some, scientists of some sort, and said, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but tell me what happened. It was a flash heat that melted the outside of the rock, but not the inside. He said, we don't know, tell us, what is this? Because it must have been really high temperature that just melted it. And he's finding all this artifacts, and they really believe it to be the real Sodom. Cool. So we go back to the Bible. It's a friendly archaeology. So Abram moves down there. He's got these two towns on the east and the west, and he built an altar to the Lord. He called on the name of the Lord. Notice he doesn't build a house. He was a nomad. He was a traveler. He just had tents. No place to call his own as of yet. Spiritually, we're in a similar situation. This world is not my home, right? We're sojourners traveling through this land. This land's imperfect. We're waiting for the perfect, which is going to come. Verse 10, now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to dwell there, for the famine was severe in the land. Do you read anywhere in here where God says, go down to Egypt because I'm not able to feed you where you are? I don't see that in there. Do you see that in there? Any other interpretations that might have it? He was correct in being concerned for a famine. I would be. But what was God's promise to Abram? I'm going to bless you. I'm going to give you this land. I'm going to defend you. What happened here is, as we do often, things start to go wrong. What if God doesn't act? What if God isn't really listening? I better take it. God, I got this one. I'll take care of this one. We do it all the time, and that's just what Abram's doing. And I love reading this because when I read dysfunctional people in the Bible, I can relate. And God wants us to relate. So verse 11, and it came to pass when he was close to entering Egypt that he said to Sarai his wife, indeed I know that you are a woman of beautiful countenance. Therefore it will happen when the Egyptians see you that they will say, this is his wife. Let's knock him off and we can have her. No, it says this is his wife and they will kill me, but they will let you live. Please say that you are my sister, and it may be well with me for your sake, and that I may live because of you. Lie. It'll be good for you if you lie, because I get to live. That'll be good for you if I get to live. Now, Genesis chapter 20, verse 12 does tell us that Sarai was Abraham's half-sister. She had a different mother. But look at the progression here. First, we make our own plans. Let's go to Egypt where there's more food. We're going to solve this problem that we're up against. We don't need God's help. We'll solve it ourselves. He's busy. Second, we try to manage those problems that come up as a result of our foolish choice. Sarah's beautiful. They're going to kill me. Yikes. Why didn't you think of that before you left? And again, what about God's promise to you? If they kill you, how are your kids going to become a great nation? You don't have any kids yet. So we see Abraham's lack of faith and fear of the world. Now, the big question on this, the elephant in the room on this one is, Sarah's 60 years old. How can she be that beautiful at 60? Well, she did live to be 127, so she's just middle-aged at 60. Gives some of us some, I'm just middle-aged. She would have been truly in her midlife years. She probably aged more slowly. Probably had great skin, great complexion, really pretty. Obviously gifted with godly beauty. But it does say beautiful countenance. I think that's more than just outward beauty. It is outward beauty, of course, but there was more to that with her. And we do read in 1 Peter 3, listen to this. Do not let your adornment be merely outward, arranging the hair, wearing gold, or putting on fine apparel. Now, there's nothing wrong with any of that. Saying don't let it just stop there. Let it be the hidden person of the heart, with the incorruptible beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. For in this manner, in former times, the holy women who trusted in God also adorned themselves. They put on the jewelry, they did the hair, but they adorned themselves with that quiet inner spirit. They adorned themselves, being submissive to their own husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters you are if you do good and are not afraid with any terror. We've all met those people. Haven't you met those people that maybe they're not that, gals, you're looking at a guy, or guys, you're looking at a gal, and they're not just overly handsome or overly gorgeous until you get to know their personality and their character. And then they become much, much prettier, much more handsome. There's something about a good character that's just awesome. So she was blessed with outward beauty, but I think she was also blessed with that inward beauty of a godly character. And Abram's worried. Verse 14, so it was when Abram came into Egypt that the Egyptians saw the woman, as she was beautiful. The princes of Pharaoh also saw her and commended her to Pharaoh. And the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house. He treated Abram well for her sake. He had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female servants, female donkeys, and camels. So, you know what? Things are going bad for Abram. Yeah, lie to him. And he gets there, oh no, they're taking her to Pharaoh's house. Well, she's single, and I'm the one responsible for her. If he wants to take her, Pharaoh has to come and ask me for permission. What am I going to do? And now he's giving me donkeys and camels and all this stuff. He's treating me great. How am I going to get out of this? He's toast. And then the other side, what do you think Sarah was thinking? Abraham, you idiot. What are you going to do? How are you going to get me out of this? I don't like this guy. What am I doing here? They have terrible eye makeup, the big dark stuff, and And then what I find interesting is Abraham's being stupid, and God still blesses him. Let me give you all these sheep and all this stuff, and I'm going to work this for good, even though you're a nut. You could have stayed home and I would have blessed you, but I guess I'll bless you this way now. And again, this is because God's promise was based on what? Not Abraham. Not on Abram's obedience or not. It was based on God's promise. I'm going to do this. You guys have the same thing. I'm going to reconcile you. I'm going to give you Jesus' righteousness who died on the cross for you. It's called grace instead of works. Verse 17. Lord's going to get him out of it. But the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. Now, it doesn't tell us how Pharaoh figured it out. But verse 18, and Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister? I might have taken her as my wife. Now, therefore, here's your wife. Take her and go your way. Get out of Dodge. So Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all that he had. It's not written in here, but I'll bet you Abram got to the point where he just finally said, Lord, help. I'm in a jam. I don't know what to do. He got to the bottom of the barrel, and God probably said, I've been waiting to hear from you with that exact message. Okay, now I'll step in and intervene. And he delivers Abram and Sarai out of Egypt. So, verse 13, chapter 13, then Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, there he is again, to the south. Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver and gold. So despite his disobedience, God blesses him and he comes back with wealth. And he went on his journey from the south as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar which he had made there first. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. So they went back to the campsite. He went back to the same place that he'd left years before. What did he accomplish? Well, he came back with blessings. Could not God have blessed him if he had stayed there? So the spiritual agenda, the godly agenda, what did Abraham accomplish? Nothing. They're wasted years. You're down in Egypt instead of looking at the land that God's promising you. Interesting that following his journey into Egypt, which, by the way, Egypt represents the world. So you could say Abram went and checked out the world and then came back. When he came back, he calls on the name of the Lord, it says. But he only does that when he's back in the promised land. He's back where he belongs. He's back in a relationship with God. He's calling out on the name of the Lord now. He's back. It's awesome. That's where we want to be. When we go sideways, boy, if we could just learn the lesson more quickly, turn around and come back. We depart on our own. Things go badly. This is the progression. They get worse and worse. Finally, we cry out. God says, okay. And then we come back. Just you and me, God. I'm back now. Never do that again until next week. It's a great lesson for us. Verse 5. Lot also, who went with Abraham, had flocks and herds and tents. So Lot's building up his wealth as well. Verse 6, now the land was not able to support them, that they might dwell together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. The Canaanites and Perizzites then dwelt in the land. Now remember, God had instructed Abram to depart from his family, but he brought Lot along. And so, with the first problem we have, congested grazing. Abram, I called you to this land. I didn't call your brother. He's not really supposed to be here. Happy to bless him, but he's not supposed to be here. He's infringing on what I want to give to you. He was an unnecessary weight on Abram's calling. And so the result, there's strife between the herdsmen. Now, Abram is called to represent God to the world because the world's going to be blessed through his kids, right? And if you're a Canaanite or what kind of ites were they? Perizzites. You could say parasites, but they were parasites. If you're one of those guys there, you're not God's people, and you're looking at Abram, I hear he worships God, that old God we heard about, Noah, and something about a flood, and we've gone on to other things, but I hear they worship him. But look at their fighting. Why should we want to be like them? Why should we want to emulate them? They're not getting along. They're fighting over the land. I'll worship my dumb little god of rock that I made on top of the mountain instead. It's way more peaceful. It's kind of logical, isn't it? Does that make sense? So then, what should Abram and Lot do with what Jesus said in John chapter 13? By this all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. There's something wrong with the picture, isn't there? God's people are not representing God correctly. Something had to be done. Verse 8, so Abram says to Lot, please let there be no strife between you and me, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are brethren. Is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. If you take the left, I'll go to the right. Or if you go to the right, then I will go to the left. Abram's being a peacemaker here. Give you the choice. You know what's neat about this is he's probably trusting God. God, you promised to bless me, so I can give him his choice, and I know you're going to take care of me, God. Go wherever you want. So, go back if you would. So they're up here on top of this hill having their conference. And so Lot looks around, and he looks down here. And apparently it's green and gorgeous and beautiful. Verse 10, Lot lifted his eyes and saw all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt as you go toward Zoar. Zoar is southeast of the Dead Sea. Then Lot chose for himself all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east. Now look at what Lot used for making his decision. The outward. That looks great. I'm going to take it. Pick the best stuff he could find. And they separated from each other. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent even as far as Sodom. But the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinful against the Lord. So Lot has a problem, but he doesn't know it yet. What's his problem, you guys? Who's he hanging out with? Listen to Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. See the progression there? First you're walking with them. Well, now let's stand and we'll talk a little deeper about this subject. You know what? There's a nice rock. I think I'll sit down and we'll really get into it. You're becoming conformed to them. Lot looked at what looked good, face value. I'm going there. God's not part of the picture of the decision. Doesn't say there was a pause. Lot prayed to God and said, where would you have me go, Lord? They're communicating with God. He could have. So his problem is he pitched his tent among the ungodly, among the sinners, among the scornful. Trouble's going to come. Plan that today. Don't we have the same thing? When we pitch our tent or walk along or stand or sit with the ungodly, how can we not expect to be negatively affected? Yeah, we're to evangelize the world, but you don't camp out with them. Yeah, let me show you God. Good. And let me come and dwell with you and enjoy what you're doing. No. We're faced every day with that choice, and when we choose the world, we're fooling ourselves, and it turns out bad. Verse 14, and the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, lift your eyes now and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, and westward, for all the land which you see I give to you and your descendants forever. And I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if a man could number the dust of the earth, what's the image there? He can't number the dust of the earth. You're going to have so many kids you cannot count them. So if a man could number the dust of the earth, then your descendants could also be numbered. Arise, walk in the land through its length and its width, for I give it to you. This is the promise to give him all the land. Additional detail. Everything you see I give to you now. And I give it to your descendants for how long? Forever. And then we get additional information on the number of his descendants, like the dust of the earth. That's a lot of kids. And then go check it out. I'm giving you this land. Go check it out. Walk around. See what it looks like. So verse 18, then Abram moved his tent and went and dwelt by the terebinth trees, it's of the cashew family, those trees. Terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and built an altar there to the Lord. So the next slide. So this is his camp by Ai and Bethel, and he goes further south. Notice the mountains are going down here. He goes down to Hebron. Mamre is just a little ways off. Do I have another slide? Okay. So Lot went down here and settled in the plains of Jordan, right here. Big, high mountain ridge. And Abram's down here. They're far apart. He can dwell in all this area. This is where the giants were. Remember when they came back into the promised land and Caleb, who was 80 years old, where do you want to live? He was one of the spies that had said, let's go in. God will give them to us. There'll be bread for us. He's one of the spies. And all the others said, oh no, we're like grasshoppers to them and don't go in. So they wandered the wilderness. Well, Caleb was one of the guys, and everyone else had to die off except for the 2 good spies. And they came back. Old Caleb's 80 years old. Where do you want to go? Send me to Hebron. That's where the giants are. I'm going to fight the giants. Just loved his attitude. Now, Mamre means vision, and Hebron means communion. So he camped where his vision was from the Lord, and he had communion with the Lord. He's walking in the Lord's vision. He's communing with the Lord. Seems like we have a time of peaceful dwelling. Abram's on the right track, living down there. Let's sit for a while. Let's grow. Pretty cool. We're going to stop there. We pick it back up in chapter 14 next time, where Lot's back in the picture. Good old Lot, my nephew Lot. He's such a blessing to me. I never have to do anything to help him out. Oh, he crowded me out of my grazing. Okay. Next week he has to go rescue him. So we'll stop there. But we see in these chapters a guy in relationship with God. He does some things right. He does some things wrong. Now, you guys know about Abram. His name changed to Abraham. What's the important thing about Abraham? Spiritually. Abraham did what? Believed God, and it was what? Accounted to him as righteousness. What happens when we believe in Jesus Christ? We get his righteousness. We are children of Abram if we have that same heart, believing God. When Cain murdered Abel, what was the problem? He didn't believe God. Abel was there offering an appropriate sacrifice. Again and again, as we go through these people that saw these miracles and saw the flood, saw creation, all these opportunities to be in relationship with God, we have 2 different types. Those that set God aside and go their own way, they're on the throne, they're in the driver's seat, and those that realize God is there and they believe him. Go to a land, I'm going to show you, leave your family. Ooh, that's kind of scary. But I'll take care of you. Okay, God, I believe you. You're going to have kids. I don't have any kids, and I'm old now. But I believe you. That's the key. In our walk today, that's our key. When we're faced with difficult times, choose to believe God. When we have sin before us that we know is wrong biblically, we have a choice. Believe God that that's going to be a problem, and believe God that if we go his way, it'll be a blessing. We have that choice every single day. And that's the key to a fun, close walk with God and dwelling in the kingdom of God, is that we're choosing to believe him and walk with him. Not because it saves us, not because it makes us more spiritual, but because it's what God would have us do. He has already saved us. He's made us acceptable spiritually before him. It just improves our relationship and our closeness. We'll stop there.